This is breaking news from Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
And good morning to you. We do have breaking news. A live look right now in Lower Manhattan, where Mayor Adams has just entered a federal courthouse to appear before a judge. This is 500 Pearl Street you're looking at. He is expected to go through the full booking process. Also there is Eyewitness News reporter Phil Tate here live now to bring us the very latest update. Phil, sending it over to you now.
Yeah, Charlene, you're getting a live look outside of the courthouse minutes ago. This is where Mayor Adams walked through those gold doors. He came out of an SUV. There was two black cars that pulled in, and he walked inside. The video you're taking a look at right now is what I'm describing. Now, he did give a thumbs up, and he headed inside, and this as he gets ready for this arraignment process. Now, we know that this morning, this is where the mayor is expected to be arraigned. This is where he's going to be processed, fingerprinted, and we'll go through this each step of the way. Now, prosecutors did want him here for 9 a.m., a little bit earlier than what we had anticipated, but this is history, Charlene, as to what we're seeing happen right before our eyes. The sitting mayor of New York City, for the first time ever, indicted and now going through this arraignment process. We do know prosecutors, they have unsealed that 57-page indictment, which outlined many of the things that they say have been wrong, quote, for breaking laws. But of course, we'll be following this every step of the way. Again, Charlene, this is just a live look outside of the courthouse as Mayor Adams gets ready to undergo this process. Charlene?
All right. A guy who I am sure is experiencing a little bit of schadenfreude is someone who was actually fired by Mayor Adams and his police commissioner as a police officer, and that is former New York City police officer Sal Greco. Sal, we don't need to get into the details of your case because we've spent a lot of time on it before and it could be a little complicated. But give me your take on what we're seeing now. You predicted all this. You've been saying for a couple of weeks that an indictment of Eric Adams was imminent, and it looks like you've been proven correct. How are you feeling today?
It's great to hear your voice again, Frank. It's been a long time. Actually, it's a somber day for New York City. This is, I believe, he's the first sitting mayor to ever be indicted. I know Jimmy Walker would have been, but he kind of left town before that happened. But with Eric Adams here, Frank, the problem is he's a highly conflicted individual, and he surrounds himself with corruptible people. And it's been like a mantra, whether it's Tim Pearson, whether it's Eddie Caban, whether it's even you got Ingrid Lewis. All these people around them are corruptible. So this was not too difficult to understand what was coming. And I mean, I just saw a video tonight. I saw Frank Corona, another guy who's under investigation, leaving, and I saw his shirt was all unbuttoned. Maybe he was checking for a wire or something,
Yeah, I'm going to play that audio of Frank Corona in just a second. Hey, so Sal, let's say there is a nonpartisan special election. Do you think that anybody other than a hardline progressive Democrat would have any chance of being elected?
I say what New York City needs right now, more than anything else, whether they're whatever party they're going to call themselves, is an incorruptible candidate. You need somebody who's probably outside the party, who's not really a politician, who comes with no bags, no connections, not someone who's corrupt or could be corrupted to be the mayor. And I think you know who I'm talking about.
I think there's a number of folks that are probably thinking the way you're thinking. Sal, keep us posted. You've been right on the money on this front. And be sure to send me a postcard from sunny Florida, where all the retired cops end up going. Thank you, Sal Greco.
I'm Sal Greco, and you're watching and listening to The Sal Greco Show. For all the new viewers on this YouTube channel or Rumble channel, or even any new listeners on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please, if you're on YouTube, hit the like button, the share button, subscribe button. On Rumble, hit the follow button, hit the Rumble button. And if you're listening on any podcast streaming platform, please give this a like and a rating. I would like to welcome you all. Obviously, there's been a lot of news here, and I did an entire media blitz in the last 24 hours about the entire Eric Adams being indicted scenario, situation, whatever you want to call it. The New York City Michigas, we'll call it. And there's even more news currently going on. His chief advisor of New York City Mayor Eric Adams, Ingrid Lewis-Martin, she was grabbed at the JFK airport when she arrived from her vacation from Japan, and they took her cell phones. She received a subpoena, not only from the federal investigators and the prosecutors, but also a state prosecution now. The state prosecutors wanted her phone. This is the world around Eric Adams is being squeezed. Eric Adams himself went to arraignment to court. So there is also that. And I guess the Department of Investigations is all over Anthony Miranda. More specifically, it has to do with the testimony he gave in front of City Council where he perjured himself, and like to thank John McCarty and Eric Dim that pointed this out. And right away, something crazy happened where Anthony Miranda allegedly, he himself called the Department of Investigations to say to come down and see what's going on in his headquarters. And then they allegedly found a ledger where it had all the money that they had seized from their operations, Operation Padlock, or anyone that they seized property or money from, and there's pages ripped out of there. So currently, Friday afternoon, the Department of Investigation is back at New York City Sheriff Headquarters. This is a around-the-clock operation. It seems like it's a full-court press. So I'd like to play all the interviews. You're going to see, I went on the Joe Pag show, my friend Joe Pagliarillo. I went on Owen Schroyer. I went on The War Room. I was on with my friend Sid Rosenberg from Sid and Friends in the Morning, WABC. I was on with Roger Stone on The Stone Zone with Roger Stone and his co-host Troy Smith. I was on Brandon House show. You're going to see everything. I'd like to thank everyone that had me on. So at the very end of this, I like to say, everyone, if you aren't subscribed to this channel, please hit the subscribe button on YouTube, hit the like button, share button, same thing on Rumble, follow, hit the Rumble button, give me a like or a rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, all the podcast streaming platforms. And after you watch all these interviews, I'll be back in the future, in the very near future, with an entire episode, and we'll break down all the latest news in the world of Eric Adams and what's going on in New York City. And don't worry, the New York City Police Department, they are also working on that tidbit that they're looking into the whole nightclub extortion racket that allegedly occurred with the former police commissioner, Ed Caban, his twin brother, and whoever else is involved in that. But we'll be back after this. So here's the interviews, one after the other. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you have a great morning, great afternoon, and even better evening. And I'll see you all soon.
But Greco is right there with Curtis. I mean, he has, I'll be honest, he's actually been ahead of Curtis on some of these things. He texted me at 4 o'clock in the afternoon yesterday that Adams is about to be indicted at any moment. Sal, this is a former New York cop for 14 years, loves Sal Greco, him and Roger Stone. He's not with the police now because they screwed him. But how do you know all this stuff, bro? How do you know?
Sid, thanks for having me on. And
Sure.
All I could say is I'm well informed, I guess.
God, but not just well informed, but, Curtis always talks about two-legged rats. He's got them everywhere, but you have as many rats, if not more, than Curtis. It's amazing what you know before everybody else does. So none of this surprised you. You knew all along that the banks, the Cabans, all these other people, it was all just to get to Eric. Now they got Eric. So who do you agree with? Curtis and Bill, who say that he gonna fight it and last it out, or Frank Morano, who seems to think the governor is going to replace him. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts is actually it's a somber day for New York City because this is a first. But again, we've been discussing how Eric is a conflicted individual who loves to surround himself with corruptible people, hence the latest police commissioner. I love Curtis. I'm the biggest Curtis Lever for mayor guy. You know, that's who I want for mayor. But I agree with Frank Morano. Either way, whether he steps down, and I'm already hearing about resignations that are going to start to, come out as the hours proceed here.
And you've been right about every one of these resignations, every one.
Correct, and there are going to be resignations to follow. And also, this is a widespread net, Sid. It doesn't end just with Eric Adams. I believe you're going to see even more people, and it's just bigger than Eric Adams. He's just a fish in the pond.
Oh, wait a second. How do you get bigger than the mayor if it's not the governor? You mean just other fire department people? I mean, it's the mayor. It doesn't get bigger than that, does it?
Locally, maybe, but right. I'm talking about statewide.
Statewide.
It's a massive corruption scandal. You got to think back, Sid. And I'm not going to say too much about it, but you see that these people always hang out together. You saw Carl Hasty there. You saw Letitia James. You're talking about the restaurant, Con San Frito, right? Yeah, Con San Frito, but they also hung out in other places. You also know about this extortion racket that the Caban brothers were involved in. So there's other areas, Timmy Pearson, there's other areas where other people, we don't know exactly what the underlings exactly were doing. So we have Eric on this, and don't be surprised if there are other superseding indictments. Wow. And I would like to say one thing here.
Well, hold on. So you're talking about even all the way up to Albany?
Correct. There could be people that right now they're very nervous because their silence is deafening, Sid. Where is Carl Hasty on all of this? Where is Letitia James? Letitia James is the Attorney General. Why wasn't she informed about any of this? There's no state cooperation, Sid. I find that odd. Very odd. But I wanted to say this, because this is important. For all these so-called MAGA Republican, let's say, politicians, city councilmen, I understand that there's a narrative. Eric Adams is, I guess, being targeted. He's trying to paint himself as Donald Trump. Let's be clear. Things could be political, but it doesn't mean that they didn't commit a crime. Eric Adams' crime is something that a lot of people have been indicted for in the past, and also very recently with Bob Menendez.
I'm glad you said this.
I'm
glad you said this because I was on TV just last weekend with Kilmeade and Tommy, and I said this whole thing about Biden and Harris going after him, which everybody says it, is so overstated. The fact is, well, I shouldn't say that. Allegedly, there are no facts. The facts, according to you. Allegedly, this guy broke laws, right?
Exactly. And Sid, thank God you're the one guy who's screaming this. And I understand Curtis. He's being somber because, I understand where he's coming from. But Donald Trump, they used a law from the 1800s, a ridiculous law that was over 100 years ago, to prosecute this man. That is political. They didn't use a law from 1800 for Eric Adams. And by the way, Eric Adams has not done anything for the migrant shelters. I know you have these people online that are trying to say, Sid, Tim Pearson was in charge of the contracts, another guy who's mired in controversy all over the place. It's actually disgraceful. This is not, if you want to say it's political, Sid, it doesn't mean didn't commit a crime, and it's not at the level of Donald Trump, where they used a law from the 1800s to bring in. And also, Sid, these same Republicans, I don't want to make it about myself, but Joe Borelli, Vicky Palladino, certain people in our Republican club, where were they when Sal Greco was being persecuted? Sid, my father died right in front of me with Internal Affairs standing outside. They chased me around as if I committed the crime of the century. Just because what? I'm a Trump supporter. Where were the right-wingers for me, Sid? If there was no Steve Bannon, the only person I remember, we have you, God rest his soul, Bernard McGirt. We had Stone. We had Frank Morano. We had Dominic Carter. Who else? Curtis Lewa. But where was Tucker Carlson? Who else? There was silence.
Yeah. Still is.
And now they're all running to Eric Adams' aid. I find that bizarre, Sid.
Well, it's not just bizarre. It's unfair to you. I mean, we know that they screwed you. We know that. But that's okay because you'll get the last laugh. And I bring you on. You're a big deal. People love you. So as far as you're concerned, and all these right now are just allegations. No one's read the indictment yet. But again, you've been all over this for a year. You've been telling me this was going to happen for a year. As far as you're concerned, Eric Adams is guilty of what crime or crimes?
The first thing I believe you're hearing is what we're all reading about. It's going to be the taking money as a foreign agent, or he's in office taking money from foreign entities. That is.
You said entity, so not just Turkey.
Yeah, no, you did read that there were 6 countries involved. And
Correct.
I love how he did speak of Israel because, like Curtis says, he loves the Czechs, but he was very silent about Turkey and China. And remember, Sid, this actually started on a lawsuit from the fired FDNY chief. That's how this all started with the Turkish embassy. That's how they started looking into him in this regards with the foreign entities. Then we had, you're right. Remember, Sid, what I tell you about Ed Caban, as the police commissioner, goes to Qatar, and only people from the government can even go on official business there. We still don't know what that was about.
Well, they tried to tell us because Qatar has intelligence that can help the Israelis on after October 7th.
Yeah.
Come on.
But that's another one. You know, Sid, only people in the Biden administration can even go there. I mean, what is he, brokering a peace deal? What's up with that? He's the police commissioner.
Six countries, the police commissioners in Qatar. By the way, my dear friend Marty Feeney, a former cop who loves you, Sal. He owns Adrian's in not Breezy. What do you call that? What is that area there by right before you go to Howard Beach there, Lewis? I always forget the name of it. Anyway, he says, are you aware that the feds were at Eric Adams' house at 6:00 today, serving a new warrant? I guess you knew that, Sal, right?
Yes. I saw. I have videos. I got ears and eyes everywhere. Said, you know why? The people on the street, you know why they want to help me out? And because they saw what was done to me personally, that I was wrong. And that's why they know Eric Adams has a history. This goes back, Sid, he was the state senate. He was in the state senate. He was involved in the race casino scandal. Maserat got locked up for that. Yeah. Malcolm Smith, I believe, got locked up for that. Eric Adams should have been prosecuted, and they declined to prosecute him. And probably the only good thing Andrew Cuomo ever did for the state was that race casino ended up giving 70% of their profits to the state.
Yeah, that's right.
That was the deal they made.
That's right.
So Eric he's no stranger to any of this. It's just he's continued his behavior because he just is a conflicted individual. Let's face it. He goes to church. God ordained me to be the mayor and has his hand out. You know why, Sid? Unfortunately, he's trying to take advantage of the African-American seniors that go there because they believe in seeing the next Malcolm X, the next Martin Luther King, because they were from that era. But all Eric Adams is a charlatan, unfortunately. I'm very sorry that this even occurred. I know you tried to be his friend, and thankfully you backed away.
I did.
Brian Kilmeade today said he was going to try to text him. Actually, Brian... the feds took his phone. I think that's going to go anywhere.
Well, do me a favor. I want to bring you back, even maybe this week again, like Friday, because tomorrow's Friday, if not Monday, the latest. I want to see what transpires today. I want to keep bringing you back because what you just said was great. He ain't no Malcolm X. He's a charlatan. So let's bring you back. You've been amazing. You were great today, Sal. I got to run because the show's about to end, but you'll be back in a day or two, I promise. Great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sid. And check me out, the Sal Greco Show on YouTube and Rumble.
YouTube and Rumble, the Sal Greco Show. This guy's great. Sal, I'm serious. If not tomorrow, Monday for sure, okay?
You got it. Anything for you. God bless you.
Keep up the great work. Keep up the great work. You're doing a great job.
Welcome. I'm Roger Stone, and yes, you are back in the Stone Zone. Well, today brings the shocking news that New York City Democrat Mayor Eric Adams and a number of his inner circle have been indicted by the Federal Department of Justice. Here to help us break this sequence of events down that brought us to this moment, first my co-host, the editor-in-chief of Slingshot.News, Troy Smith.
Roger, it's always an honor to join you in the Stone Zone.
Joining us now, a former New York City police officer, Salvatore Sal Greco. He is a 14 or perhaps 15-year veteran of the New York City Police Department, having served the people of New York in some of the most dangerous graveyard shift neighborhoods in the city. He was terminated by the NYPD for on an entirely baseless basis, really a political hit job. He is fighting that in court quite successfully. He and his attorneys have defeated 2 motions to dismiss by the city of New York, and he knows more about this issue and the level of crime that brought us to this moment. Sal Greco joins us now in the Stone Zone.
Roger and Troy, it's an honor to be here.
Well, Sal, I got to give you credit. You have for well over 2 years, almost 3 years now, predicted this day would come because you are a law enforcement officer and have great detective skills. Most of the corruption issues surrounding the indictment of not just Adams, but Adams' entire inner circle and some of his top political aides are due to dogged reporting on your part and a indefatigable effort to get the truth to the people of New York and the country. It's a long and winding story, but it begins in a restaurant in the Bronx called Consofrito. Why don't we start the narrative there?
Yeah, so Roger, what you're mentioning here is kind of like the hub, we'll say, for the Eric Adams administration and the upper echelon New York City Police Department, along with numerous politicians, including the State Attorney General Letitia James and the head of the Assembly, the Speaker, Carl Hastie. It was a restaurant in the Bronx in the industrial section called Consofrito. It is owned by the police commissioner's brother, Richard Caban, and the creator and manager of the place is a guy by the name of Jimmy Rodriguez, a self-admitted criminal and mob associate who used to own Jimmy's Bronx Cafe, a place that was infamous, so infamous that Major League Baseball banned its players. It's the site of where Fidel Castro came when he did come to New York City that one time. And also Jimmy is associated to numerous politicians such as Bill Clinton. Hillary Clinton, when she announced her run for Senate, did it in front of his laundromat. It's now long forgotten, but that laundromat did have a sticker that said, Jimmy Bronx Cafe is going out of business. Come here to get the bills that he owes. So this is a little known fact. So it's a place where a lot of politicos and police officers and so on go there, especially now convicted criminals. There's a lot of felons that go to this place. We nicknamed the Hall of Felons, which you could see on the walls and who walks in. Fat Joe, Peter Guns, all these guys walk in. So famous rappers. So this place, though, was under a mire of controversy from the beginning, going all the way back to 2021. The original owner, the owner of the place was an Albanian guy that owned it. It was called Acri Cafe. Once again, Jimmy Rodriguez was in the background. And then as the place became from Acri Cafe to Consofrito, they then shifted everything over to Richard Caban to be the owner. As this transition is happening, the Albanian guy seems to slowly weed out. And this Albanian guy, though, what happens is as he's giving away the place, he's still on the SLA license. That's the liquor license, yet Caban owned the place, which was already one red flag. So then when Richard Caban takes over later on August of 2021, there's an incident that occurred. And we see that I legally obtained this document. It was the NYPD sent a criminal referral to the State Liquor Authority, and it comes from the Vice Human Trafficking Unit. A human trafficking unit from the NYPD wrote this letter to the SLA in regards to this incident that occurred, and then the trail runs cold. The SLA starts an investigation. They all of a sudden shut it down in December. We don't know why. It never states why, just withdrew it, and the party goes on. Next thing you know, in 2022, the Department of Buildings, which at the time was headed by Eric Ulrich, remember him, he was indicted long ago. So Eric Ulrich is the head of the buildings. They went over there and they summoned Consofrito and said, you have an illegal party shed. There's this 50 by 100 foot shed that's on the corner of the restaurant, and they use it for a party room. And it was deemed illegal. It was a public safety hazard. They were ordered to tear it down. They didn't tear this down for approximately 2 years, by the way. Then the fire department shows up. Same fire department that you're hearing about that gave favors to Turkey through Eric Adams. That fire department went there, handed them 20 violations, said there's no fire suppression system, makes it a fire trap. Party goes on. We then have the health board. The health department shows up. They gave him an A rating despite the fact that they cited them multiple times. They said there were mice in the food. There's mice droppings. I mean, it's just disgusting what you're reading. Fruit flies. Yet the party goes on. And we see that we have fraternal organizations from the police department. We have Eric Adams. We have Carl Hastie, Letitia James, numerous state senate people, city councilman, Ralph Salamanca. They're all there all the time having numerous fundraiser party, you name it. So then we go to January 6th. They have a party there that's sponsored by Internal Affairs, who ultimately should have been investigating the place for all these NYPD fraternal parties they had that should have never got approved, because just by what I'm telling you, knowing this history, they should never be in there. Oh, and by the way, the former owner that I mentioned, this Albanian guy, in early 2023, was actually picked up by the feds for human trafficking. He was trafficking people from Canada into America and was picked up, and he's on a 3-year probation, I think, right now. So there is something there to look at, the former owner. So then, as this goes on, January 6th, they have this party, and the landlord had a court order against them because it was a violation of their lease. They're supposed to tear down the shed. They didn't. They waited 5 extra months. They owed $14,000 in back rent. They didn't pay a water bill. I mean, it was just a mess. They clearly just did whatever they felt like doing. They finally tear the shed down to have another party. This time it was in the parking lot. They violated the court order again. And there's the New York City Sheriff, Anthony Miranda, smiling with Jimmy Rodriguez drinking, while the police department's out front, and the allegations and rumors were that they were also drinking in uniform. It was one big party for them. They finally got a court order, a judge to shut them down. Okay, the judge put the order. That was it. Concert Freedom finally closed. But during this whole time, you're now hearing about who? Eddie Caban's brothers running an extortion ring, his twin brother, James. James was seen there numerous times. Eddie, it was like he lived in the place, and Richie that owned the place. But the common trend here is the names that you're hearing over and over again were seen in this place. So as you know, and I was a cop, Roger and Troy, when you hear about crime families, they always have to have a hub. Where are they all located? This seems to be the center of the epicenter of where they were hanging out all the time and the base of their operations. And then from there, the tree grows. It goes all over the place, and it becomes a big operation. And you're about to hear other people that are involved, Roger.
All right, so just to clarify things for our viewers, when he refers to Ed Caban was the New York City Police Commissioner.
Right.
His brother was running an extortion racket, essentially offering protection to nightclubs and restaurants against code enforcement and other problems. He has now been forced to step down. The most serious allegations revealed today in an indictment that was just released a few moments ago, so we haven't really had time to study it, but there's a lot of threads to this. But I think the most serious one is the allegation that Mayor Eric Adams was getting laundered campaign contributions from foreign sources, specifically Turkish forces, Turkish entities. And of course, the city of New York has a 10-to-1 matching formula. In other words, for every dollar you raise, the New York City taxpayers end up subsidizing you with an additional $10. And that's really the beginning. There are raids on a number of the mayor's associates who are involved in fundraising. The mayor himself is ambushed by the FBI, which actually takes his phones. What do we know about that, Sal, about that entire money laundering operation?
It seemed that he took about $10 million in donations, and he was doing lavish luxury suites, trips. And actually, Roger, that goes back to 2015. And I just want to state, because I see there's a lot of these so-called MAGA Republicans or MAGA politicians out there that are saying this is a political hit job. Let's be clear. What Eric Adams did and what he's being accused of is nothing short of what just happened to Bob Menendez and recently with Brooklyn Democrats. It's actually something that's common amongst local politicians. What Donald Trump, President Trump, was charged with, they used that statute from the 1800s, which is ridiculous, to charge him. That is a politically motivated, which they basically picked him out of a hat and said, we're going to use this to charge him. They are selectively enforcing that. They haven't done that since the 1800s. There's a difference between the two. So when we hear, Roger, Vicky Palladino, councilwoman, other people that are in New York City, Joe Borelli, then we're going to go even further. We'll have people like a Steve Bannon out there. Where were they when I was being persecuted? My father dies in front of me. I have internal affairs outside. I was treated like a criminal because what? I'm a Trump supporter. And I'm your friend, Roger. Where were the voices then? But now Eric Adams is a politically targeted person. What about Sal Greco? Where were the voices then? I don't really want to make it about myself, but I find it ridiculous. You can't even compare the two. What Eric Adams did is egregious. And guess what? It doesn't end with Eric Adams. It's going to be more people, Roger. You're going to hear about this. There's allegedly 300 more indictments coming with numerous people involved. And it's, you know, he's a highly conflicted individual who surrounds himself with corruptible people. We just saw his own new police commissioner, another corruptible guy, who was raided by the feds 1 week after he was named as a NYPD police commissioner. And Roger, you saw the document that I found that he wrote a letter of leniency to that treasonous FBI agent Charles McConigal, who was taking bribes from the Russians, and meanwhile he was part of Russian collusion. And if it's true what Tom Donilon did, where they were looking for documents, Roger, where we had that before, taking classified documents. I believe the only person that could even touch that would have been the president, which they try to bamboozle Donald Trump with. But guess what? If Tom Donilon's doing it, that's treasonous. And we already know he's good friends with a treasonous traitor of the country already. So what is Eric Adams doing but surrounding himself with corruptible people? It is no surprise to hear this. There's been rumors for years. And Roger, you go back to your days in New York City. Remember when he was in the state Senate with the race casino scandal? Maserat, his buddy, got charged. Malcolm Smith got charged. But Eric Adams, who was guilty, they left off the hook. And I have his old testimony, and you could read it, and it's pretty damning. And the only good thing Andrew Cuomo did for the state of New York was in that deal, the profits from the casino, 70% go to the states. Probably the one good thing this guy actually did in his entire tenure. So Eric Adams' behavior has never been corrected. And now you're seeing everything come to light because he just continued on his path, Roger. It's a really sad day for New York City, but really, if you really think about it, it's not unexpected.
Well, the defense that he's offering today, and it's important that many in MAGA world understand this. No, he was not targeted because he is a critic of the Biden migrant policies. First of all, he campaigned for mayor of New York City on a platform of making New York City a sanctuary city. Secondarily, he has purposely cited migrant shelters in middle-class Republican neighborhoods in Staten Island and Queens, and they have become magnets for crime. So this defense that, oh, he's just being targeted because he's a critic of the Biden administration migrant policies is 100% false. Sal, the one thing I have to urge you to do here is not everybody in our audience knows who all these characters are. So when you say Tom Donilon, you have to tell them who Tom Donilon is. When you say Ed Caban was the police commissioner. His brother was, as I say, shaking down establishments for protection. He was forced to resign. Now, this actually includes the school chancellor was forced to resign. His brother, another high-level aide to Mayor Adams, also forced to resign. It appears there may be as many as 300 indictments of the people in Eric Adams' circle. So when you see this defense today, that this is politically motivated, no, I think it's because the level of crime became so egregious, so obvious. It's not just Eric Adams. It is his entire internal circle. And just to be clear, Sal Greco was terminated by the NYPD because it is alleged that he violated a regulation of the department that said that he could not associate with an individual who in the past may have or in the future may be involved in criminal activity. Yet the police commissioner is consorting with Jimmy Rodriguez, a convicted felon. In fact, we know that when Eric Adams himself was a New York City police captain, he consorted with Reverend Al Sharpton, a convicted felon. The Reverend Louis Farrakhan, a convicted felon. Mike Tyson, a convicted felon. He was brought up on the same charges as Sal Greco in a departmental trial. But he didn't get his entire career destroyed. He wasn't terminated. He wasn't refused a letter of good conduct. He wasn't stripped of his pension. No, they docked his vacation time 5 days. And now compare that to the case of Salvatore Greco. Sal is suing in the federal courts. The city of New York has moved twice to dismiss that suit. The judge has denied that motion. Yet the city is dragging its feet when it comes to discovery. I'm sorry, but it is not believable that there were no communications between the police department and Mayor Eric Adams regarding this high-profile case. Sal Greco was terminated simply because he is a friend of mine. Yes, he was in Washington on January 5th and 6th, but he was not at the Capitol, and there is no evidence whatsoever that either he or I had advanced knowledge of, was involved in, or condoned any illegal activity on January 6th. That is a fantasy of the left, although they certainly investigated in violation in many cases of their own rules, and they found nothing. When I say they, I refer to the city of New York. This is a shocking development. You can already see Adams trying to use a political defense. My sources tell me that he is arguing strenuously for a pardon on the part of outgoing President Joe Biden. But Biden is not particularly close to Eric Adams. Perhaps he thinks he can get a pardon from a President Kamala Harris, but I don't think there's going to be a President Kamala Harris. And he is looking at hard time here. Taking foreign campaign contributions and then submitting them for a city match is both a federal and a state crime and a serious felony. And that's just the tip of the iceberg here. You have so many levels of crime. It's really quite extraordinary. You're right. This is a crime family, and it all begins with an examination of that restaurant in the Bronx, Consafrito, which was essentially the headquarters for the Eric Adams crime family. Troy, a question for Sal Greco.
Absolutely, Sal. I want to ask you because I know it's been a long fight for you, just since you were persecuted by Eric Adams in the police department and these individuals that have been taken over in New York City. And I just want to ask you, what kind of emotions ran through your mind when you saw the news that he had actually been indicted? Because I know you've predicted it on this show, you've predicted it on your Twitter feed for a long time now, and it just had to feel like justice. And secondly, how do you think this is going to end up? Do you think we'll actually see a day where Eric Adams is behind bars, or do you think he's going to pull some strings like Roger's kind of talking about here, and able to get out of this?
Well, the initial emotions were, it's almost a surreal moment. I'm thinking back of what actually happened to me. We had the problems, my father passing away. We had what happened to me personally being persecuted, and everything that even Roger went through. I think of political persecution. I think of no one else short of Roger. I was there for Roger's trial. I went through everything with his family. It's like Roger is my family, and to try to compare this guy to that is laughable. It really is, when really Eric has criminal tendencies. And, I did predict it, but it's a somber day for New York City to have your mayor, as he's sitting right now, an indicted mayor. The first time ever. Not even Jimmy Walker got this treatment, or William O'Dwyer, who were both corrupt, but not as corrupt as Eric Adams, apparently. So it's a somber day, and you see everybody saying, well, Jumaane Williams he's going to be the mayor. He's a placeholder. He doesn't even have time to set up an administration because it'll be a special election. And there's no doubt that's going to happen, because whether Kathy Hochul removes him or this committee that they have, that the city charter has in his rule book, he's going to have to be removed. There are people flocking off the ship right now, Troy. You're going to have resignations. Who's going to even want to listen to this guy? He calls himself the mayor. I mean, we know what's going on here, and nobody wants to be a part of it. So it's a somber day for New York City, but for all those people that say Jumaane Williams, well, you guys in New York City elected him. Some of the New York City residents don't even go and vote. And when you look at the 8 million people in the city, how many of them really vote? And you look at those numbers and go, well, those are putrid numbers in the mayoral election. And that's part of the problem. You have to have a stake in the game to have a say. So if you're now worried about Jumaane Williams, well, you elected him as public advocate. You should have thought about that. What if scenarios? That's how people do that in a national level, or do they? See, elections have consequences, Troy, and New York City is learning the hard way that now, starting today, in the future, you really have to do research on your candidates that you're going to put in, and you're looking to elect to office, because we can't do this identity politics. Oh, I'm the swagger man, all this garbage. Vote for me. We're the same skin color. We're the same gender. I'm the first of this or that. Because now look at the scenario you're stuck in. And now everyone's pointing fingers. Oh, we have Jumaane Williams. But you voted for Jumaane Williams. So now you have to eat what you sow. You know, you have to eat your own crow. You should have voted. If you didn't vote, well, now you got to blame yourselves.
Let's address what happens going forward. I agree with Sal's analysis. The mayor may be vowing to stay on, but he won't be able to do so. The city now moves to a special election, which will be completely nonpartisan. So there'll be no primaries. Everybody will run in one election, and it will involve rank choice voting, which is a system in which you vote for more than one candidate. I disagree with those who say that the public advocate, again, Sal, we have to tell people who these folks are. Public advocate Jumaane Williams is the front runner. I think this is going to be a huge race with multiple candidates. By the way, there is no runoff, so any candidate could win this with, 20, 25, 23% of the votes, depending on how large the field gets. AOC, yesterday afternoon, called for Eric Adams, her fellow Democrat, to step down because she said the corruption rumors around his administration had got to be so great. So in other words, AOC was tipped off, and she knew this was coming. The irony here, of course, is that within the milieu of New York Democrats, Eric Adams, who's an extreme liberal, is not progressive enough for people like AOC, despite the fact that he has located migrant shelters in stable, largely working class neighborhoods throughout the city of New York, causing a massive upsurge in crime. Let's go to that now. The mayor, the police chief, and the commissioner, and this guy Kaz Dodry, you can tell us who he is, they continued until recently to allege that crime in New York City is down. It looks to me like it's because they have manipulated, just like the FBI did, they've manipulated the statistics. Sal, tell us about that.
So it's a common practice here. So what goes on is it's called CompStat. They have a meeting at the end of each week. They all get together and they release these numbers. And the numbers are the 7 major felonies, misdemeanor crimes, violations, all the 7 majors, which is murder, rape, robbery, assault, grand larceny auto, and also I think regular larceny. So here's the thing with that, though. When you release the 7 majors, these are manipulated, and I could tell you how this works. So, Roger, let's say you're walking down the street. You have your let's say your laptop in your hand. Somebody walks over in New York City, punches you in the face, rips the laptop away, and they're gone. Technically, Roger, that is a robbery. But what they'll do is they could downgrade this crime and say, well, it's actually not a robbery. We could say it's a petty larceny or a larceny, and then make it a assault or vice versa. And you stay away from the felony. Meanwhile, when they report this to the FBI, they're going to say it's assault 3, which is a misdemeanor, or even a petty larceny, saying that the laptop's not worth over $1,000. And meanwhile, when the FBI then reports it, because they have to announce their official report, I believe in February or March of each year, then the NYPD goes back and manipulates that and goes, oh, we're going to change that back to what it is, a felony. So you actually saw this year. So they inflate numbers and then deflate them at the same time. Whatever it takes to manipulate the whole crime is down, jobs are up, the city's not surviving, it's thriving, Eric Adams lingo. So that's what's going on. And then we also have the FBI was underreporting crimes and overreporting crimes and sometimes not underreporting crimes. So you have a little bit of between the police department and the FBI, the right hand's not telling the left hand what to do. So they're manipulating the crime stats every week. A good friend of mine, Sam Antar, he puts this out on his X feed. He's always reviewing the numbers, and he finds all the misdeeds. Under Eric Adams, Roger, violent crime is up 30% in his tenure. 30%. He's telling you crime is down. How is that possible? Violent crimes are up 30%. And the misdemeanor crimes, Roger, those are the assault threes and the petty larcenies I'm talking about. Those are through the roof. That tells you people, what they're telling you, they don't feel safe. And he says it's a perception and not a reality. The perception is the reality. They are seeing it. They don't feel safe. They see it in the street. And Eric is going to tell you the opposite because he's doing whatever it takes to politically survive at this point, Roger.
There's another going on here, just yet another of this sequence of crimes. I'm looking at the clips here, which are really overwhelming. Frank Carone, a key advisor to Eric Adams, recently subpoenaed by an investigation regarding his dealings with a Brooklyn church. Yet another tentacle of this same web of corruption. Tell us about that, Sal.
So Frank Carone, who is up to his eyeballs with Eric Adams and a lot of his dealings. In fact, last night, you did see him leaving Gracie Mansion, and he had his shirt unbuttoned. And I said, oh, I guess they were patting him down for the wire, because there's all sorts of rumors with him. And I could tell you through the grapevine, through a back channel, what I heard, and it's just a rumor, but I'll put it out there that I heard that he's selling his house because his indictment is imminent. They've been looking into him for quite a while. These trips, you heard about the foreign trips. Remember, Frank Carone went to Azerbaijan. I think that's one of the countries, or Uzbekistan, and he was meeting with these foreign nationals. And remember, he was the chief of staff to Eric Adams. He's also a very big frequenter of Zero Bond. They were throwing fundraisers over there. There's all kinds of questions. Now you have the church, so the Monsignor's involved, and he's another guy who's a shady guy in the background. Frank Carone, he's a well-known lobbyist in the city. Everybody knows what you're dealing with him. This comes as no surprise because, once again, here's another corruptible individual that Eric Adams surrounds himself with. So this is no surprise. And like I said, I would expect, from what I understand and what I believe, he will be joining Eric Adams in a future indictment.
Okay, we're going to take a quick commercial break here. And then when we come back, we have a bit more with Sal Greco. And then Troy Smith and I are going to get into some of the politics of the day. Now, Sal, as you know, in order for a woman named E. Jean Carroll to file a civil case against Donald Trump, claiming that many years ago Trump sexually assaulted her, a trial in which he was held liable for that sexual assault. No, he was not convicted of rape, despite the fact that many of the elements of E. Jean Carroll's story seem highly questionable. They had to actually change the New York State law to open a window to essentially suspend the statute of limitations so that they could indict Trump. This was the brainchild of George Conway, the former husband of Kellyanne Conway, and one of the principals in the Lincoln Project, a Trump hater. To their surprise, when they used their contacts in the Democrat-controlled legislature and with the signature by the Democrat governor in this setup to try to charge Donald Trump, well, two other individuals got charged. A woman came forward to accuse Eric Adams of sexual assault, and a woman came forward to charge Andrew Cuomo with sexual assault. We'll put the Cuomo issue aside for another day, but today you have learned, Sal, that the taxpayers of New York are paying for Eric Adams' legal defense in this sexual assault matter. Is that legal?
Actually, Roger, that is official misconduct, and I'll tell you why. In New York City, there's a law. It's under General Municipal Law 50K2. Under this law, what happens is Corporation Counsel, who any employee in New York City, especially in the police department, which is where Eric Adams used to be employed, which is when this supposedly, allegedly happened, would have to determine what happened and give a letter to the public. It's public, this letter, because the public would be paying for your defense. And just not giving your legal defense away, but explain why they're defending you. Now, remember, they must defend an action that you took while doing your duties, meaning it's got to fall in the scope of your duties or it had something to do in your job. And Roger, sexual misconduct, especially assault or rape, does not fall under the scope of anyone's duties in New York City, let alone the New York City Police Department. So they're representing him illegally. We don't understand why. There was no reason given. We, as the taxpayers, have the right to see the letter. They gave me a letter that said there was no letter. That was my FOIL request. There's nothing. So what happened is the head of the Corporation Counsel, Sylvia Hinz-Radix, she ended up stepping down because Eric had a hissy fit behind the scenes when she said, we can't represent you, Eric. And then six city lawyers are on this case, plus another lawyer named Alex Spiro. Remember him? He's a big shot attorney. He's on this case, and he's also representing Eric in a criminal case. But the taxpayers are on the hook for this particular case, which is a sexual assault that took place over 30 years ago when Eric Adams was a sergeant in the Transit Guardians fraternity, which she was a part of, in the transit division of the time New York City Transit Police, which then merged in the NYPD. But the problem here is it's official misconduct by whoever decided to represent Eric because it is illegal. It does not fall under the scope of the duties. And Roger, we see this with numerous people in his administration, actually. We've seen this with Ed Caban, this civilian named Brian Adams, who's in the police department, the chief of department of the NYPD, Jeffrey Madry, the chief of patrol, John Schell, in the NYPD, also the deputy commissioner of operations, Kaz Dawdry. They're all named in a lawsuit with a woman named Damon Arachlin, who just so happened to now end up in front of my judge in Brooklyn last week in a case of another sexual harassment case, which includes Eric Adams yet again. So the city is illegally representing these people. They are fleecing the taxpayers. They're running up the tab. And when is anyone going to step in with that? Is there going to be a hearing on city council? Does it take, I don't know, maybe Letitia James could wake up and actually realize she's a state attorney general again? Someone needs to step in with that because, Roger, they are fleecing the taxpayers. This man is highly corrupt.
Troy, you have another question for Sal Greco.
Absolutely, Roger. As we're getting to the end of this segment here, we have a video that I wanted to play and ask Sal about directly, and that it relates to the relationship between now indicted rapper P. Diddy and Eric Adams, and ask him if he has anything to do. You know, the P. Diddy indictment comes just a week or two before this Eric Adams indictment, which I find very interesting. We've actually pulled a video of Eric Adams giving the key to the city to P. Diddy, and if you watch the Stone Zone, you would have seen this already, and him celebrating him, and now knowing what we know, pretty troubling stuff. So let's roll that and then get Sal's opinion on if this P. Diddy indictment had anything to do with the unraveling of Eric Adams. Let's roll that.
On Diddy Combs can add New York City to that list. It's Diddy Day in the city. Videos have been playing on the Jumbotron for TSX Broadway, and the crowd waited. Then around 11:30, the doors opened for the mayor and the artist.
The bad boy of entertainment is getting the key to the city from the bad boy of politics.
I want to thank y'all for this honor and just recognizing me being from New York, giving me the key to the city. Diddy finally has the key to the city.
Today's event coincides with the release of his new album, The Love Album, Off the Grid.
Quite incredible. A lot of speculation today that Eric Adams is now a man in tough shape, because you see, normally the underlings roll on the big fish. Right now, who knows? The Caban brothers, Carone, all of these other city officials seeking to make a deal for themselves, they're probably rolling on Eric. But Eric doesn't have anybody to roll on because he is, as we Italians say, the head of the snake. The only thing here that occurs to me is there's two people he may have information on that would be problematic. One of them potentially is P. Diddy. The other one is Attorney General Letitia James. Now, we know that she was among those who frequented Casa Frito, and we also know by analyzing the funding of her campaign that she's among those who took thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in repeat small contributions from donors who either don't really exist or when they're contacted say they have no memory or record of having given any money to Letitia James. Letitia James has a lot of power as New York Attorney General, but she's someone that Eric Adams could try to feed to federal prosecutors to get them to go easier on him. Thoughts on this, Sal?
She is the true, I would believe, the true head of this entire operation. Just by when you look at it from the outside in, she's the head law enforcement agent in the entire state, and she was associating with criminals. And meanwhile, Roger, she has the power to make you a convicted criminal. That is completely a contradiction, and she should be called in and sanctioned for this. And, you know, I saw the video there, and I want to make one point there with P. Diddy. Standing to Eric's left and to the right of the screen was Ingrid Lewis-Martin. She's his chief advisor. She's been absent for over 10 days now. She was not at 2 consecutive press conferences. They say she's on vacation. I think she's in a witness protection program because she knows where all Eric Adams' bones are buried. She was with him all the way back from 2015. She also frequented Casa Frito, and she looked to be all happy when she saw P. Diddy. And I'll tell you what, these freak-off parties where you have a lot of celebrities now scrubbing the internet, you're hearing the rumors of the cops involved. You're hearing rumors of the hip-hop police, which was a squad in the NYPD back in the day. And I like to also reiterate, P. Diddy was given the key to the city, and then very recently, who else? Fat Joe. Fat Joe, very, very he must have lived at a Casa Frito. He was there so much. And he also is very close friends with P. Diddy. So this is an intricate web. The more you dig, it's going down a rabbit hole. You have all these different associations. And we're going to wait and see here, Roger, because right now this is the indictment you're reading. But with 300 people on deck, who knows if there are any superseding indictments coming? And is P. Diddy talking from jail? That is yet to be determined.
Final point here. This is one you will certainly remember. Again, this is about a double standard. So again, they terminated Sal Greco as a New York City police officer. They destroyed his life, but they don't hold themselves to the same standards. Cardi B, a rapper with a criminal record, was actually invited to speak at the New York City Police Academy. And therefore, she came into contact with all of the top brass of the New York City Police Department. Why weren't they terminated for their association with her? It violates the same regulation that they say you violated, the regulation that Eric Adams violated when he was a police captain, for which he got a slap on the wrist. Just another egregious example of the two-tiered justice system. No place more prevalent than in New York City. All right, we're going to have to move on. I want to thank our guest, Sal Greco. Sal, you have a new show, the Sal Greco Show. Tell us where folks can see that.
Sure, Roger. Thanks. So you can watch my show on Rumble. It's at The Sal Greco Show. You can give it a follow and a Rumble, please, and check it out there. Or on YouTube, The Sal Greco Show. Same thing. You could click the like button and subscribe, hit the notification button. Also, I'm on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the major podcasts that are streaming on the net. And give it a like and a rating and check it out because I discuss this in more depth. And I also show people there's articles that are written that normal people don't know about because they're like subscriber based, but I show the articles and read, and there's a lot of good information there from these journalists, these beat writers in New York City who are, up and coming. And check out the show. I discuss sports, politics, NYPD, and many other things. So The Sal Greco Show, and of course on Twitter or X at The Sal Greco.
All right. Many thanks to our friend Sal Greco. Sal, I know you're going to be very, very busy today. You've got a lot of requests for shows. This is a day of vindication for you. You said for over 3 years that this day would come. In the beginning, people didn't believe you, but well, a lot of people believe you today. You're a hero for bringing the truth forward, and I really hope that the city will settle your lawsuit because you did nothing wrong. And I have a Sal Greco did nothing wrong t-shirt. I might wear it this weekend. All right, Sal, thanks for joining us here in the Stone Zone.
Thank you, Roger. God bless. God bless, Troy.
Joining us to discuss is Sal Greco, 14-year veteran of the NYPD. Sal, great having you on. So the police department is tied into all of this. Mayor Adams says that just last week, the feds searched the home of the new police commissioner, looking for documents apparently from 20 years ago. So what's really going on here?
Well, Ivory, it's a long, twisted story, but I could break this down the best I can. So we're going to go to Tom Donlin, who's the NYPD police commissioner currently. First of all, the documents they were seeking, they actually went to multiple homes and they took things out. They won't comment on it. And yes, this is a police matter. He is the current police commissioner, even though they're trying to tell you it's not a police matter. It is. Secondarily, I released a letter that Mr. Tom Donlin wrote to the court in regards to former FBI agent who's a disgrace, Charles McGonigal. If you remember him, he took bribes from the Russian and was involved in a Russian collusion. He was asking for leniency. So just in that one instance, Tom Donlin is a corruptible human being. He has no business being a police commissioner, but Eric Adams, who is a conflicted individual himself, surrounds himself with corruptible people.
So when we look at some of our government leaders, they've committed things that have obviously been, corruption and criminal, many would say. Maybe Hillary Clinton with the Steele dossier, for example, and nothing seems to happen to them. But all of a sudden, Mayor Adams is getting hit with indictments. Is it possible, has he done, do you think he really has done corrupt things? And if so, the feds were just looking the other way, and now because he's being too hard on migration, they're finally coming for him? Or what's your take as a New Yorker?
Well, I'm going to say this. Anything could always be political, but also doesn't mean that there's not a crime involved. And if we're going to turn a blind eye to a crime, whether you think it's political or not, I don't think that's right, because that's saying we have one rule for one person and another rule for another. There's two parts to this. So first, I hear a lot of these MAGA people now, politicians, and so they're saying they're trying to compare him to Donald Trump, which, by the way, let's remember Eric Adams said he wanted to keep Rikers Island open for Donald Trump during his case, because if he was going to get jailed. Just so you remember, he's no fan of Donald Trump. All of a sudden, they want to come out and help him. So he is being charged for crimes that very recently Bob Menendez was charged with. Brooklyn Democrats were charged with this very recently. It doesn't pertain to, like, it's a hit piece on Eric Adams. But in Donald Trump's case, they pulled a statute from the 1800s and applied it to him to charge him 4 different ways. That is singling someone out, and that is political. 2 wrongs don't make a right. Eric Adams is not, it could be political, but it is more in line with a crime. Secondarily, what Eric Adams has done with his crime, he was taking donations from a foreign nation, okay? And actually, they were monitoring him since 2014. This goes back to him being a Brooklyn borough president and a state senator. He was involved in the race casino scandal, Ivory. You could look it up. And Mazerat and his friend Malcolm Smith were 2 senators that were indicted and charged and convicted, but yet Eric Adams skated on that. Meanwhile, he was up to his eyeballs in what was going on there. So he's not, like, this isn't a secret of what he's done. He's always mired himself in controversy and around corruptible people. They were investigating him for at least 10 years, though, and now the trail has led to what we see today. He's been giving a bunch of chances, and he just keeps continuing his behavior. So, unfortunately, it's a somber day for New York City, but it's not unexpected if you look at the man himself and the people he keeps around him.
Interesting. Yeah, the indictment says that he took donations, I guess, from foreign people in Turkey, of all places. I wonder why he would, why would Turkey have those ties with New York City? We're out of time for now, though. Sal Greco, great having you on.
Thanks. And check me out on the Sal Greco Show on the YouTube and Rumble. And by the way, that show started with your producer, Simon, actually started my show. So
okay, shout out to Simon. He rocks behind the scenes here at OAN as well. Great talking to you.
Thank you, Irie. God bless. So you're going to hear about this. It's going to be more coming. They're already, New York Times already reported today that they were looking at the connections between NYPD fraternal organizations. Were they getting discounts at these nightclubs? What exactly is going on with the extortion racket? This is nuts, Owen. I mean, you could basically say, is this the plot of a movie? And
no, it is. That's no. Have you seen the new Batman movie? Joining me now is a great American and a former NYPD officer, Sal Greco. And I wanted to have him on today to talk about the situation with Eric Adams. And I think maybe we kind of frame this because I had a lot of people reaching out to me, a lot of other journalists covering this, saying, oh, well, this is clearly political. Let's be careful not to go after Eric Adams. And I said, well, look, two things can be true. This can be political, but he also can be corrupt. And that's the situation I see going on here. So, yeah, it's definitely a pick and choose who they charge. Maybe it's coming right from the Biden-Harris Department of Justice. Maybe it's because he called out the illegal immigrant invasion happening in New York City. Maybe it's for other reasons. But I also believe that the charges will probably stick because there's probably something there. Despite Eric's cries of innocence here, they did release their indictment today. Ironically enough, it's basically the same thing that they're charging Hunter Biden with. I mean, go figure. So Sal Greco joins me now. Sal, what is your take on this Eric Adams situation? I mean, he was a former New York police officer as well, just like yourself.
Well, Owen, it's good to see you again, first of all. And, well, look, Eric Adams is a highly conflicted individual who surrounds himself with corruptible people. And I do hear this narrative out there, and let's be frank with everything. Eric Adams, when it comes to the migrant shelters, when he became, first of all, when he ran for office, he's the one that actually ran on New York City will be a sanctuary city. He then, with the migrants, he didn't say he's not for open borders. He is for open borders. He said he is the Joe Biden of Brooklyn. And when it came to the migrant shelters, he was placing them, Owen, he put them in areas that were, first of all, working class areas and predominantly conservative areas like Staten Island, where he put a migrant shelter across the street from a school that's all girls. Okay, so he was crying about the money, Owen. He wanted money for the shelters to keep his scheme going with his other aide, Timothy Pearson, who just got pulled from the contracts he was getting from the migrant shelters. The whole thing is not political. See, like you just stated, Owen, it could be political, but could also be a crime. So it really, and we can't compare this to President Trump because, Owen, with President Trump, they used a statute from 1800s, which was 100 plus years ago, to persecute a man, which they basically picked him out of a straw hat and said, we're going to do this one time on one man. That's political. Eric Adams being charged just like Bob Menendez. There was a case of Democrats in Brooklyn a few years ago with the same straw donor case, because, you know, New York has this matching funds straw donor thing, which 8-to-1 matching funds. So that's what he really is ensnared in. You know, Owen, he's just, the guy cannot stop surrounding himself with corruptible people. His police commissioner, now Tom Donlin, who you're finding out is this guy was friends with the disgraced FBI agent Charles McConigal. Okay, remember him? He wrote a letter of leniency for him. That's the police commissioner now, Tom Donlin, who just got raided by the feds a week after he took office. Eddie Caban, the former police commissioner, he was raided by the feds, and his brother owns that infamous nightclub. I'm sure you've heard me screaming about it every day, Con Sofrito in the Bronx, that's now shuttered, which, by the way, who's going there all the time? Letitia James, Carl Hasty. So, I mean, it's just one thing after the other. Anyone in New York could tell you, Owen, we kind of expected this because it's just in Eric Adams' nature.
You know, that's funny about that club. That sounds like right out of the Batman movie, you know, the club that the Penguin is running and all the shady government agents go down there to hang out. That's kind of crazy to hear. It really is like Gotham City, apparently. And look, in the indictment, and anybody can go read it now, it's public. And I wonder too, it seems like maybe there's a tug of war and there's something going on behind the scenes here. The indictment claiming that there's some Turkish building owned in New York City, and Eric Adams basically kind of rubber stamped the fire code investigation, and they're saying it's basically pay for play, $100,000. Maybe there's more going on, and that's just kind of a warning shot to Eric Adams. Of course, he's crying innocence. I mean, it seems like kind of open shut. Of course, we'll see what happens. He's innocent till proven guilty, just like anybody else. But how does this tie into the larger picture? I mean, there have been like 8 raids with people involved in law enforcement and people Eric Adams has surrounded himself with just in the last couple months. So what's the larger story here?
The larger story is, I'm understanding, there's about 300 people that will be indicted shortly. It's a widespread corruption scandal that is spreading not only in New York City, but it's the state. I keep telling people, you're seeing a lot of silence from 2 people in particular that were very close friends of Eric and hanging out at Con Sofrito, and that's Letitia James, the Attorney General, and the Assembly Speaker of New York State, Carl Hastie. Carl Hastie and Letitia James are linked at the hip, and when you think about it, Letitia James hanging out with shady people, you know, it's funny. She's the person that can make somebody a convicted felon. Yeah, she loves to hang around them, apparently. So does Carl Hastie. And this nightclub, Owen, what's going on here is the brother of the police commissioner, Richard Caban, who owned the nightclub, the co-manager, the manager of the place was a guy by the name of Jimmy Rodriguez, a self-admitted criminal mob associate who just so happens to have been very chummy with the Clintons. In fact, Hillary Clinton, when she ran for the Senate, she announced it in front of Jimmy Rodriguez's laundromat, a little laundromat in the middle of nowhere, just so people could go back in time. And he owned a place called Jimmy's Bronx Cafe, had Fidel Castro there, and the Major League Baseball banned their players from going there. So when you think about this, the nightclub, which you're hearing is an extortion racket. The twin brother, James Caban, a former cop too, was thrown off the job. They're running around, and it's alleged that they were extorting people using the police department as security, which would mean that Eddie Caban committed official misconduct. So there's a ton of cops that are going to be investigated. Also, these parties they were holding at Con Sofrito, which was illegal. They violated the buildings department where they were told to tear down a party shed. They never did. They were given 20 summonses from the fire department as a fire trap. We now know that there was an allegation, a criminal referral from the police department to SLA from the human trafficking unit. We don't know whatever happened with that. The state liquor authority had an open investigation. They closed without explaining why. And then the health department cited them for having mice in the food and other disgusting things, yet they kept an A rating. And then party all the time. We had Letitia James, Carl Hastie, Eric Adams, the Cabans, the chief of department there from the NYPD, multiple NYPD upper echelon. We also had, there's criminals there. You had Fat Joe, Peter Guns. These guys are known convicted criminals, and they're all hobnobbing in the same place with law enforcement and the top law enforcement agent in the state, Letitia James. So you're going to hear about this. It's going to be more coming. New York Times already reported today that they were looking at the connections between NYPD fraternal organizations. Were they getting discounts at these nightclubs? What exactly is going on with the extortion racket? This is nuts, Owen. I mean, you could basically say, is this a plot of a movie? And
no, it is. Have you seen the new Batman movie? The first Edward Pattinson one?
Yes.
This is, I'm not even kidding you. This is like the exact plot out of the most recent Batman. Pretty good movie. I guess that's because reality is better than fiction. I mean, what you're describing is, almost to a T, police commissioners hanging out at nightclubs, the mayors. Literally to a T. That's like the plot of the Batman movie. What is the Joker going to pop up next? Is the Riddler going to enter the frame? What's happening here?
It's even crazier. Owen, you know the mayor, the same lawyer that today came out and said we're gonna go to court tomorrow. I guess Eric Adams is going to turn himself into court. That lawyer is representing Eric Adams illegally in a sexual assault case from 30 years ago. You remember that law they put in New York State so that woman could sue Donald Trump for some sexual assault allegation from 40 years ago? Well, they used that against Eric Adams, Owen. And then what happened is this woman who claimed that he sexually assaulted her in a car, and they do know each other from their days in the NYPD. That woman who's suing him is being browbeated by this lawyer. And guess what? The city is illegally paying for it, representing Eric Adams and others that work underneath him for sexual assault, which doesn't fall in the scope of your duties in New York City as an
Democrats
employee.
are well known for using government funds to pay for attorneys. And by the way, so is Congress. Yes. I believe the number was $21 million that Congress had spent on hush money, basically, to cover up sexual assault allegations. Mm-hmm. That story came out about 5 years ago. So, okay, so let's look at the other angle here. If this is political, which again, two things can be true at once. It can be political and he could potentially be guilty, innocent till proven guilty. Let's see what happens. But what's the political angle then? Why are they going after Eric Adams? Is this good people doing this? Are there good people left in law enforcement? Is this political, let's say, revenge for him calling out the illegal immigrant invasion? What do you think is going on with that?
Well, I think here what actually happened was the initial look into Eric Adams, which the Turkish embassy started on a civil lawsuit. Damian Williams in the SDNY, if you haven't noticed, a lot of his cases are always off of civil lawsuits. The federal government actually, when it's not Donald Trump involved, will take a look at your civil suit and they look at what you're alleging and they can look into this. So in this instance, there was a former FDNY chief, I believe, that was terminated and made these allegations about this Turkish embassy and other things that led to, you recently heard that 2 former FDNY chiefs were indicted last week for the same thing, bribery and taking money for inspections. And he alleged that in his lawsuit. And he also alleged that Eric Adams had this list where there was certain people getting inspections. And voila, here's this whole investigation into Eric Adams that goes back 10 years. Goes back 10 years, Owen. That would knock out a political, if you're going to even say political, say, well, 10 years ago, he was a Brooklyn Borough president. So how did that come about? Doesn't sound political if you're going back 10 years. So, Eric had issues as a state senate. He was a state senator. He was part of that race casino scandal that led to the arrest of his friends, Hiram Massarat and Malcolm Smith. They were both state senators. And what the only part of that was good was Andrew Cuomo cut a deal at the race casino. 70% of those profits would go to the state. But Eric Adams, who was guilty as sin, if you read his testimony, was left unindicted. He then went on to become the Brooklyn Borough president, where this particular indictment picks up everything that was going on. So they were looking at him from 2014 on. This lawsuit that this fired fire chief put down, that's what they stemmed and forced this move from the SDNY. And you're going to see a lot more movement because this guy is very big with public corruption. And I'm telling you, I'm understanding behind the closed doors, there's at least 300 people that will be indicted upcoming.
All right. Now, I know you're obviously former NYPD, highly decorated. I'm sure you probably have some contacts inside the NYPD. Where is morale right now? I know it's been low for a lot of reasons in New York City. Where is morale right now? And is this the kind of thing that can boost morale? Is this the kind of thing that can let good cops do their job and make them feel like they're necessary again?
Problem with the police is, first of all, you have this nepotism ring that all these upper echelon guys that I've been discussing that hang out at these nightclubs and do all these crazy things. The men and women that work as a rank and file in the street, I mean, they're basically being looked as an afterthought, and that's how they feel. They're also handcuffed because the state Senate and the state assembly don't have the proper legislation to fight public safety or support public safety at all. Neither does the city council. You got district attorneys like Alvin Bragg that are prosecuting cops for doing their job. And then you have Eric Adams, who is, instead of fighting for them, is sitting there saying, crime is down, jobs are up, the city's not surviving, it's thriving, and all my haters are my waiters at my table of success. This is the guy who's supposed to be fighting for them, and clearly he's not. He's an opportunist and a charlatan, and today shows that on paper, actually. So the problem is the police department needs a revamp. It needs a revamp from the top. So this movement where you're seeing a corruption scandal unfold, it needs to happen because you need New Yorkers need to actually wake up and realize the people you elected, because some of them, there's 8 million people in New York City, and I don't even know if they vote. Not all of them vote, but they tend to vote one way. One party rule will do this. So if you keep voting one way, what do you expect in New York City? Everybody's crying that Jumaane Williams is going to become the next mayor now if Eric Adams steps down or is removed, which should happen, is probably will happen. But you guys in New York City voted for Jumaane Williams, and he's only a temporary hold. There will be a special election. But that's New York City in a nutshell, Owen. It's just, it's the city that never sleeps. But unfortunately, Owen, it is the financial capital of the world. And if it falls, so will this country.
And I think that goes nationwide. These people keep voting for Democrats and then complaining about the consequences. It's no endorsement of the Republican Party, but I mean, my God, the Democrats should not be anywhere near power. And this debate is over, quite frankly. It's over. Sal Greco, thank you for your time. I know you're going to be following up on this. Where can people follow you for any other breaking news?
Well, on X, it's at the Sal Greco, Truth Social at Head of the Table, Instagram, the Sal Greco, and on YouTube and Rumble at the Sal Greco Show. Also, it's on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, Google Play, all the podcast streaming platforms. And I do break this all down. I'll be breaking it down even further as the week goes on. And I'm just here trying to spread the truth, Owen. And God bless you, Owen. Thank God you're alive and well. Because the last time I saw you, I remember what was going on with you, and I said I can't wait to see you again, my friend. Thank God.
Months ahead of my imprisonment as last time we saw each other.
Yeah.
Hey, the Head of the Table, is that a play on Roman Reigns?
Yeah, I thought you would actually play the song when I came on because for my whole life, I've been told I look like Roman Reigns, and I just embraced it. I learned he's actually half Sicilian, and I'm running with it. I am the head of the table. I am the tribal chief, the original tribal chief.
As far as I can tell, you dress better, and I'll leave it at that. I'm
the same height. You met me in person. I am the same height.
You are a dead ringer. I mean, it's crazy. You're basically a dead ringer for Roman Reigns, Head of the Table. All right, Sal Greco, appreciate your time. Follow him on X. Follow his podcast. I know I'm going to continue to follow this story. Probably about as good of a source as you can get right here. Sal Greco. All right. Oh, there it is. As he leaves. We give it to you on the way out. Sal. All right. There goes Sal Greco. Good job by the crew. It's a WWE reference, folks. Roman Reigns. He really is a dead ringer. It's kind of absolutely insane. All right.
Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this man back. Former NYPD officer and my good friend, my paisan, Sal Greco. Sal, how are you? Good to see you.
It's good to be back, Joe. We got to get you in the Italian-American Civil Rights League. That's where you're going to be.
I want to be in there. Roger Stone has been talking to me about that. We have to find out how to get membership, and I know there's a big event coming up. But I want people to understand who you are. I've had you on a few times. We've been friends for a while now. And you're a former NYPD cop who was fired, you say, because you were friends with Roger Stone. And they were literally saying that you were cavorting with a convicted criminal or something. Roger, of course, has been pardoned, so I don't know what that's all about anymore anyway. But you gave great examples of how the NYPD commissioner was walking around, or the chiefs were walking around with people who have known criminal records. Who was it? Was it Cardi B or somebody who was there?
Cardi B was one. Of course, this nightclub that was owned by the police commissioner's brother at the time, right. Ed Caban's brother, Richard Caban, called Consofrito, with the co-manager of the place, Jimmy Rodriguez, who's a self-admitted criminal mob associate. That's the guys they shouldn't be hanging around with.
Well, what's interesting is, and we've talked about this at length, both in person over dinner and also on my show. You're fighting this fight not for you. You're fighting this fight for your father, because that name is that important to you, and you want to make sure that the legacy of the Greco name is not stained by this BS thing that they did to you. So, I mean, today it looks a lot like Sal Greco is vindicated. Tell me when you found out about the indictment against Eric Adams, who you've been going after Eric Adams since day one, rightfully so. I mean, so much so that like 3 a.m, you'll send me a text. I'm like, Sal, stop. What are you doing? But you were right the entire time. Do you feel vindicated today?
It is a slight vindication, but it's also a very sad day, Joe, to see the sitting mayor of New York City, the shiny city on the hill, have its leader be indicted. And it's, we saw this in the past it was way before our time with Jimmy Walker and then William O'Dwyer. But, I mean, no one's ever been sitting mayor and getting indicted. And I feel extremely sorry for the New York City taxpayer and residents who's been fleeced by this man. He has sexual harassment, assault lawsuits that the city's illegally representing him in. And now you're hearing about this indictment, Joe, and it's just like bribery. He accepted $10 million in that 10-to-1, the matching funds, the straw donors. He fleeced $10 million off of that using a foreign country. Joe, this is crazy. I don't know what this man was thinking, Eric Adams.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, we'll say alleged, and police say, or prosecutors say that he did this. But the story is just what you said.
Yeah.
Allegedly, $10 million of taxpayer public money somehow goes into his campaign coffers. And you mentioned that nightclub that I also know that Letitia James, I think that you've shown me pictures of her going to this Consofrito place, whatever it is.
Correct.
But isn't she the one that's charging him?
No. Here's the
I thought it was.
The crazy part here, Joe, is there's two individuals here that their silence has been deafening since this entire thing started breaking. And that's Carl Hastie, the Assembly Speaker, and the Attorney General, Letitia James of New York State.
Right.
Joe, you know how this works with the feds. Usually the state parallel investigation with the feds.
Right.
So there's been no comment from Letitia James' office about any of this. She hasn't been contacted, so this is strictly a federal operation.
So this is a federal indictment. They're not even working with the AG of New York?
Absolutely not. There's been no comment from her office. Zero. Go
ahead.
Which would tell you, Joe, do you really think this all ends with Eric Adams?
Oh, no, of course not.
Yeah.
And you know what's interesting about this, and I want your thoughts. It's Sal Greco. I've got a couple of websites for you, either salgreco.com or helpthisnycop.com. And you also check out his show. He's doing a great show on Rumble now, and follow him everywhere that you possibly can. As we're watching this unfold, we know that Eric Adams was in the good graces of the Democrat establishment. I wonder what your thoughts are on this. He decided to go to the border and find out what was really going on because New York City was being inundated with illegal aliens. He goes to the border, and then suddenly, when he goes to the White House, he's ignored by Biden. He's ignored by Harris. He now is on the outs and wasn't even smart enough to realize he was on the outs. Do you think this is a political play because he, I don't know, made them look bad?
So here's the actual story with Eric Adams. So when it comes to the entire border, he ran on New York City being a sanctuary city.
Right.
He was always for open borders. He called himself the Biden of Brooklyn. What he was complaining about was the money. He wanted money from the government to keep funding his little migrant shelters, which, by the way, Joe, he dropped in all the working class would say Republican-leaning neighborhoods.
Right.
Bensonhurst, Staten Island. He put one right next to an all-women's school, an all-girls school. I mean, Joe, that's questionable stuff that he's doing right there. So it's not about the migrant shelters at all. And in fact, Joe, the indictment goes back 10 years. It starts in 2014 when he's the Brooklyn Borough president. That's how this all starts. It has nothing. There's nothing on there that has anything to do with politics or we'll say anything to do with the migrant shelter. This is really a far stretch. I don't know what these our fellow Republicans or MAGA people are reaching for. He's strictly said he's for open borders. He's never once said that he's against open borders or Joe Biden's policy.
Well, listen, Sal, I played the video and the audio on my show. You're right. He has said it is a sanctuary city, always going to be a sanctuary city. I've shown that video. But he's also a politician, and he wants to keep his power. So I do think there was some shift when he started talking about going to the border and seeing what the problem was, because he knew that the voters of New York City were turning on him because you guys are overrun. Really nice hotels are filled with illegal aliens. You've got jobs being taken by illegal aliens. You've got services going to illegal aliens. So Eric Adams, as much as he wants more illegal aliens in his town, suddenly he was going to start suing the bus companies. Suddenly he was going to start suing the drivers personally if they didn't stop bringing them. I think that he saw the political writing on the wall, don't you?
He's very good with his, politically. You could tell he knows how to jump on the bandwagon because, remember, he talks out of both sides of his mouth. He's very good at that. You see him at the town halls. Once again, in this issue, how he very distinctly says he's for open borders, and now he has people saying that he's like Donald Trump. When there is two separate things. Donald Trump will say Donald Trump was charged by the government using a statute from the 1800s.
Right.
If that's not political prosecution and persecution, I don't know what is. He was specifically targeted with a crazy statute from 100+ years ago for one person. That's it. It hasn't been used other than this one time. That's political, not Eric Adams, who's being charged just like previous politicians, Bob Menendez being the recent one.
Right.
And there were Brooklyn Democrats being charged a couple of years ago for the same stuff. Straw donor, bribery, wire fraud. It's not uncommon to be charged for this as a politician. Just wish he would be smarter, I guess, as the mayor of New York City.
Right. It's Sal Greco. Go to salgreco.com or helpthisNYCOP, helpthisNYCOP.com. Go check out his show over on Rumble. I'll put a dot on that point with this, and then I want to move on to something else. Eric Adams, if you're in, you're not getting indicted. And here's what I mean. Joe Biden is the most corrupt person we've ever had in this country. Period. End of story. The House just released absolute fact without reproach that they took $27 million we know of from oligarchs, and he's still the president of the United States. He hasn't been indicted. He hasn't been impeached. He hasn't been kicked out of office. So I guess my point is this. Eric Adams was in until he wasn't in anymore. You could be as corrupt and as nasty and as horrible like the Clintons for as long as you want to be, as long as you're in lockstep. I think he stopped being in lockstep, and that crossed the line. So I'm with you. I think he's a bad guy. I hope that if he's guilty, he gets the longest prison sentence we've ever seen. I don't think this would have happened had he stayed in line and shut his mouth. That's the only point that I'm making on that. But I want to ask you, if you don't mind, get into the details that you know of the allegations, of the indictment. Where does the $10 million come from? Literally from taxpayers?
Yes, because what's going on here was he is taking contributions from Turkey, which is a foreign entity, and then passing it off as if it was local people donating it to the campaign. In New York, it's this 8-to-1 match. They have the funds there. So that all built up into $10 million total. And he also took lavish trips. So what they also did was convert some of this into, the seats on the plane that they're talking about.
Sure.
So it was $15,000. He says he wanted it for $50 a seat, and they made an arrangement for $1,000 when the seat was worth $15,000. So you see, this is the kind of games that we're playing with the donations and this kickbacks, and you even hear him on the phone or whatever on his text messages. And I think he denied the genocide. He was saying, "I'm for Turkey. He's against the Armenian genocide," which is crazy that he would even say that. So he's for the Muslim Brotherhood or something. I read that part. I go, "Wow, this guy really is a charlatan and a half." Like he says. If a Mexican comes in, he goes, "This is the Mexico of New York." If it's St. Patrick's Day, he says, "This is the Dublin of New York." He just changes whatever chameleon color he has to go on, as long as he's got his hand out and you're looking to give him money for any cause. He'll do and say whatever. He's the typical politician, Joe.
Oh, absolutely. It's Sal Greco. Sal, we appreciate you coming on. So you've been exposing Eric Adams for a long time. Even during the pandemic, he was seen like at nightclubs partying with no mask on. So this guy has been a bad guy from day one. I think we've talked about this before, but for my listeners and viewers around the country, let's do it one more time. How does he get into this position of power? Here's a guy that was was he the police chief, and then suddenly he was a racist guy about we don't want any white crackers here or something, and then suddenly he's the mayor of New York. How did this happen?
Well, when he was in the police department, Joe, he started as a transit police officer, and back then it was the transit police department, and then merged it to NYPD. He was a let's say politically charged sergeant. He was good friends with Al Sharpton, who he shouldn't have been associating with, who was a convicted criminal at the time. Then Louis Farrakhan. Then Mike Tyson. Right. They found him associating with criminals, but they never gave him a penalty or anything for that, which is funny how they did that for him and not for me. Right. But then he became a captain. He left the job and he ran for state senate. Now, I remember as a state senator, Joe, he was involved in the race casino scandal, which cost his friends in the Senate, Hiram Mazarat and Malcolm Smith, they went to jail. They got indicted. Eric Adams' testimony, which is very damning, they declined to prosecute him. And Cuomo cut a deal with the race casino where 70% of profits ended up going to New York State permanently.
Wow.
Eric wasn't indicted, and then he became the Brooklyn Borough president, and that's where they start this investigation in 2014. That's
Amazing.
the facts of Joe that about Eric Adams, Joe.
No, Eric Adams is he's a mess, and you've been calling him out since day one. And at first I was like, wow, Sal's really, he's really obsessed with this. Then I went, wait a second, he's doing really good investigating. Then I was like, holy crap, look at what he found out about this nightclub and all that. What do we know about this nightclub? Is it closed down now?
Joe, they were closed down after 4 years of there was allegations from the police department, from a human trafficking unit to the state liquor authority. Had an incident there. Hearing human trafficking unit is alarming. And the official documents up on my X, there was also the SLA revoked their investigation. SLA is the state liquor authority. They had an open investigation, just pulled it without there's no reason why. They never explained. Remember the shed they had, the party shed they had there? That was ordered to be taken down by Eric Ulrich, by the way, the indicted former buildings commissioner of Eric Adams. He never took it down. The fire department said it was a fire trap. The health department found mice in the food. They were given an A rating anyway. Joe, This guy endangered the public, poisoned the public. It was a fire trap, yet they always got away with it. It was party all the time over there. And Joe, you're going to be hearing about that nightclub very shortly. You're hearing a drip, drip, drip in regards of the NYPD commissioner, former commissioner Ed Caban, his twin brother, James, who was running around allegedly extorting people, but there's evidence of it in nightclubs using NYPD security. That's official misconduct by his brother, giving him a security detail. And then the other brother, Richard Caban, who owned Concha Frito. And then we all have all the people that were there, Joe. What exactly were they doing? And they're looking into this right now, Joe. The feds are looking at that. Doesn't stop with this. Buck does not stop with Eric Adams show. It's going to be
amazing,
very widespread.
And you've been all over this from the beginning. Go and follow him on X. It's the Sal Greco, TheSalGreco. You'll see his pinned tweet is, as I predicted, NYC mayor Eric Adams indicted. Go and check him out there. Go follow him there, and go check out his show on Rumble. We were talking about this, I believe, before we started. What happens now? Because I know that Curtis, our good friend Curtis Lewa, is now somehow in play. If somehow you got Eric Adams stepping down or being kicked out of office, whatever happens, what's the process in New York to replace him?
So it's a two-pronged system here. Obviously, Kathy Hochul, the governor, could remove him at any moment, or they have a committee that is actually designed from the city charter. That would be a couple people from the city council, the head of corporation council, one of his deputy mayors. And out of the 5, I believe, they only need 3 or 4 of them to say, we vote to have him. He's incapacitated, so he can't be mayor. And they vote on the city comptroller, and that's it. He's out. And then they'll have the public advocate would take over, which is Jumaane Williams, who's nobody's really a fan of. He would become the mayor on a temporary basis until Kathy Hochul has about 90 days to announce a special election. And then it's a crapshoot, Joe. Anybody could run for mayor. And next to their name, it doesn't say Republican or Democrat. It's just a name.
Wow.
But the problem will be what we discussed, ranked choice voting.
Ranked choice voting, for those who don't know, is where you go and vote. You vote for your number 1 candidate, your number 2 candidate, your number 3 candidate. They add all those up, and the number 1 and the number 2 are going to take each other on. You can write somebody else in. It's all a bunch of garbage. This is the way Kelly Chewbacca, who's a great Republican from Alaska, lost to Lisa Murkowski, because they use ranked choice voting. I'm a guy who believes, and I think you are too, Sal, you go and vote, and you pick the person you want to win. I don't want to rank anybody. And if you don't rank anybody 2nd and 3rd, that could actually hurt your candidate as well. So this is all messed up. But please tell me that Kathy Hochul can't just say, I picked that guy. Tell me that she can't appoint somebody. She can't, right?
No, she cannot appoint someone. No. All she could do is announce that she's going to remove Eric Adams, and then that's when Jumaane Williams would become mayor. And I know people don't like it, but unfortunately, that's who New York City voted for him to be the public advocate. You can't complain if you don't have you don't vote. So unfortunately, he will become the mayor in a temporary status, and after that, you will have this special election, which unfortunately would be a ranked choice voting. And, of course, our guy Curtis is definitely going to be involved. I really want Curtis to be the mayor. I know
Me too.
He's the only incorruptible candidate that there is. There's not a corrupt bone in his body. He would take on down all these people, all these issues. He knows them. The community loves him. It's just, can he win in a city that's virtually 70% Democrat.
Well, I would hope so, because they just found out what their Democrat mayor did. And you're right. I mean, listen, uncorruptible, the mob tried to kill him and they couldn't. So, I mean, I'm going to get Curtis on very, very soon. Give me about 30 seconds or a minute, Sal, if you don't mind, just on NYC crime. Is it still running rampant? Is it still out of control like you haven't seen before?
Actually, Joe, the true crime stats are that under Eric Adams' tenure as mayor, violent crime is up 30%.
Wow.
What they're telling you is just a sham. It's cherry picking. And in all honesty, there's a lot of fugaziness with the numbers going on. I broke that down on my own show. You could check that out on Rumble or on YouTube on the Sal Greco show, at the Sal Greco show. You could check it out. I always put out a chart. My friend Sam Antar, if you check him out, he's the former CEO of Crazy Eddie's. Yeah. I always repost him. He has every week the actual crime stats. He breaks it down. And it's all fugaziness, Joe. And they're underreporting things. They're reclassifying crimes. And then they go on TV and tell you, oh, it's just a perception. You don't feel safe. Meanwhile, Joe, your eyes don't mistake you. Let's be honest. Look at New York City. You have all these people. You have prostitution over there in AOC's district. You know, AOC, who came out swinging against Eric Adams. Yeah. You know something? Concha Frito was in her district. She did nothing about it either. It's amazing. Her district is a disgrace right now. But yet she's going to remain in office, Joe. It's incredible.
It's Sal Greco. Sal, we love you. We love the work that you've done on this. Go to the Sal Greco over on X and over on Rumble. Let's do it again soon, my friend. Thanks for making time today.
You got it, Joe. Thai American Civil Rights League. Don't forget it.
We'll check it out. We're back after this. Stay right here.
Roger Stone texts me today. Whenever Roger Stone texts me, I sit up and pay attention. And he said, this would be a great guest. And then I looked into him and asked Logan about him. And Logan's like, oh, yeah, I know who Sal is. And he said, you must have gotten that contact from Roger. I said, yes, I did. And so this guy is very interesting. He's former NYPD. And Roger told me if there's anyone that knows anything about Eric Adams, it's this guy, Sal Greco. He just is now getting off of another broadcast to be with us. So he's in very much demand today. He's been on radio and TV and podcast all day today. Sal, thanks for being with us here on Brandon House Live.
Brandon, it's an honor. I usually am watching Roger on your show next to him on his studio. Instead, now it's me finally on your show.
Well, I'm glad. If I had known about you earlier, you would have been here earlier. I love all those certificates on the wall there. Tell us about that and give our audience your bio.
Well, I'm a 14-year veteran of the NYPD. I have an unblemished record. As you see behind me, I have numerous awards that I was given by the NYPD. Unfortunately, they had a problem with me. That problem is that I'm a Trump supporter and a friend of Roger Stone's. They put me through a 19-month witch hunt, and they said I violated an NYPD patrol guide procedure, that I wrongfully and knowingly associated with someone who's likely to have engaged in or reasonably believed to have engaged in criminal activity, i.e. Roger Stone.
What? Wait a minute. You were friends with Roger Stone, who may have been involved in criminal activity, and therefore you shouldn't have been friends with Roger Stone, and you lost your job because you're Roger Stone's friend?
Correct.
So I guess that means if this is how it's going to go down, friends of Roger Stone, I guess the people that broadcast his show, I mean, I guess they're making a list. I guess we are all on a list, and the arrows start going to each other, and voila, this is how it's going to be played, is it?
They try to treat this as if it was the crime of the century, and it really goes back to one day. They saw me with Roger in D.C. on January 5th and 6th, where we didn't do anything illegal. They basically probed the both of us. There was nothing ever there other than I was there with Roger, and they said I was uncompensated security, whatever that means. And then they terminated me after their little department trial, their little show trial they put on. So then I immediately filed a lawsuit. I've been in litigation with them. And then along the way, I found out a lot of corruption here. Who knew that the mayor, Eric Adams, and his cronies underneath him in the police department, like the former police commissioner, also the current police commissioner, they are all up to their eyeballs in not only criminal activity, associating with criminals. You're seeing people getting raided tonight. There's raids going on all over the place. And meanwhile, what? Sal Greco, guilty of being a Trump supporter who's Roger's friend. How does this work in America?
Yeah, how does it work in America? This is scary. Although, you know, I'll tell you, I had a reminder by one of my regulars who texted me during my 1 o'clock show today, and he reminded me of this. there's so much happening. It's so crazy. But he reminded me of this, and it's going to pull up here on my phone. I'm going to read it. But he reminded me that in a stunning admission, the Biden administration has acknowledged that the names of individuals who purchase religious texts, including the Bible, are being collected and stored in a criminal database by the U.S. Department of Treasury. This revelation came in a letter from the Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network to Christian Action Network in response to a February 2024 Freedom of Information Act request, which I said on the radio today and TV today. Well, I have a Bible usually sitting within hand's reach, and I've ordered already in the last 60 days, 3 Bibles, and I'm going to order some more because I have 2 people that have asked me for a Bible, and I gave them Bibles, and I try to keep a few more around. So I guess I'm on the list because not only do I order them, on Sunday nights, I actually teach from the Bible for my Sunday night class. I'm teaching through the book of Revelation. So isn't this is where we're going? You're friends with the wrong people. You order a Bible. You're a Trump supporter. I mean, this is Gestapo stuff, is it not?
Yeah, I would definitely say the government is littered with nefarious characters per se. I can't say that about the Southern District of New York right now, as it seems that they're on the trail of where they should be. But with Biden in particular, when you see the heads of his other agencies, we don't know what he's saying or if he's even capable of understanding what they're explaining to him. So you're starting to see. And it is in the final days of his presidency. Because as you know, come January 20th, no matter what, Joe Biden won't be the president anymore. So, in the dying days of a regime, what happens? Everybody underneath you, if you're the head of an agency, they go crazy. So obviously, you're starting to see that. And if people would get their hands on the Freedom of Information Act, I'm sure you're going to see other things that have been going. I know this one thing about the airplane. I believe when you ride on your ticket, if it says 4 A's, you're on a list, or 4 crosses, it's always 4. If you look at your ticket when you go on the airline, if you have 4 of a I guess a letter or something, that means you're on some kind of list.
Really?
Because it happened to Tulsi Gabbard and another friend of ours, Mike Crispy. So I find that, like, who puts you on these lists, and how do you end up on a list? Because Mike Crispy has never committed a crime in his life, and neither has Tulsi Gabbard. So I find that odd. I don't know who's calling the shots, but that is some shady, shady stuff behind the scenes.
Indeed it is. So, Sal, let me ask you about Eric Adams. There are people out there saying, oh, he started complaining about all the illegal immigrants filling up New York. Yeah. And as soon as he started complaining about that, I knew they were going to take him down and go after him. Is that what this is about? Or is this guy really a guilty guy?
Well, Brennan, let's go back to when he ran for mayor. His campaign was New York City is a sanctuary city. He said the position of New York City is the border must remain open. He called himself the Biden of Brooklyn. And when he is doing with the migrant shelters, as he puts them in working class neighborhoods that are predominantly conservatives. Where? Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, Queens, Rockaways, Staten Island, where he put one right across the street from an all-girls children's school, okay? What he was really complaining about, Brandon, was he wanted more money. He wanted more money to get more shelters so he could get what we all know now from his underlings are their cuts. Timothy Pearson ran a contract, which he's being investigated for right now, running the migrant shelters. So he was looking for the money. That's what he complained about. This has nothing to do with the migrant shelters. He is all for open borders. He's never rescinded his endorsement from Kamala Harris. He is a Democrat. It's what it is. This is insane to try to compare him to the president, who, by the way, the president, when he was charged, unlike Eric Adams, was charged with a 1800 statue, a statue from 100+ years ago, and what can only be described as not only a political persecution, but arbitrary, selective. Eric Adams is being charged for crimes that just a few months ago they charged Bob Menendez. And just before that, they had Sam Bankman-Fried. Just before that, they had some Brooklyn Democrat politicians. This is very common in New York City to have politicians fall into these crimes, straw donors, bribery, wire fraud, because this is common practice. Politicians in New York City like to do this kind of stuff, and they'll get charged from time to time. There is nothing political about this. The crimes that were alleged started in 2014. Long ago, Trump wasn't even running for office yet. And I believe Trump's reign, when he started to run for office, it was 2015, and it actually started on I remember where exactly it was. It was a table in the back of the Beach Cafe on 70th Street and 2nd Avenue, New York City, on Roger Stone's laptop. And then I believe Corey Lewandowski walked in, and the rest was history. That's how the Trump campaign started. I don't know where people are getting this Eric Adams connection to Donald Trump. He doesn't even like him. Remember what he said, Brandon, during Trump's trial? Well, Rikers Island is closed, but we're going to keep it open, because he was saying he's going to make room just for Mr. Trump. I think he said something to that degree at a press conference. So why do people equate this guy as a Republican? I don't get it. I really don't understand what's going on there.
So you believe he's probably guilty of what he's being charged with?
I believe here, Brandon, not only are these charges, they're very alarming, by the way, what he did. He was taking $10 million. He's being alleged of taking $10 million in public matching funds. He's already fleecing the city, being represented for sexual assault, which is illegal, because that didn't fall under the scope of his duties as a police officer 30 years ago, when they hit him with the same lawsuit that they hit Donald Trump for something from 30 years ago. Everybody didn't say anything when Trump was getting hit with him now, but Eric Adams got hit with it. But, now it's a problem. So the city's representing him illegally, along with a lot of other individuals, all his friends in his administration. He's fleecing the city when they're representing them illegally in these sexual assault lawsuits. Then he's got this problem. And, Brendan, don't be surprised if there's superseding indictments coming on Eric Adams, because with everything around him, I'm being told the rumor is there's 300 people that are about to be indicted. It's not just Eric Adams. It's widespread. I'm going to point out two people in particular here. Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York State. Her silence is deafening. We know that she's been seen at Conso Frito, which is the Hall of Felons, where Eric Adams and the police commissioner, Ed Caban, his brother, owned it. Eddie Caban was there. The manager of this place is a self-admitted criminal and a mob associate. I mean, this was just where everybody went. Politicos, criminals, cops, they're all hanging out in the same place, Democrat Party. And then we have other individuals underneath him, like a Timothy Pearson that's being looked at from every direction by the FBI. We also have tonight his sheriff, New York City Sheriff Anthony Miranda, another Conso Frito alumni. He loved going there. He got raided tonight by the Department of Investigation. And guess what they found? They found a safe there with $100,000, and that shouldn't even be in his office. It should have been vouchered by NYPD officers, which is insane. Who knows what this guy is doing in his office? He's seizing property from cannabis stores, which is illegal. There's no court order on this. But Anthony Miranda is doing this, and Eric Adams is touting, we took $66 million in Operation Padlock, which is illegal. There's no court orders. You can't hand people criminal court summonses and take their property. That's illegal. What's the reason behind this? So that's another scandal that has recently developed with Anthony Miranda, who's being looked at by the Department of Investigation, which is also the FBI and the Southern District of New York. And this is just, Brandon, it's just nonstop. It's just every day it's something else.
What about P. Diddy? Sean
P. Now here's an interesting thing with P. Diddy. What we know right now, he's hit with these charges and he's talking a big game. He wants to, I guess, go on the stand. But there's a lot of rumors about this freak-off party he's talking about. And the rumor is, back in the day, in the last 10, 20, 30 years, there used to be a unit in the NYPD called the hip-hop police. These are detectives. You could go back to the original shooting that happened in New York City where P. Diddy was charged, but someone else took the rap from his pal. So this hip-hop police is somehow involved around P. Diddy. We don't know exactly who's been at the freak-off party, but there's rumors that there's politicians, and of course, whose name would come up in that? Well, the illustrious mayor of New York City, his name has come up. Also, police officers, executives that have been around. You're also hearing other celebrities. You're hearing other musicians. People like Fat Joe, who's another Concha Frito guy. They found a video of him from the early 2000s talking about going to the freak-off parties. So this seems to be a hidden secret that the only reason we know about this, Brandon, is civil litigation. The federal civil lawsuits that were launched against P. Diddy is what was used by Damian Williams to present the facts, to present an indictment, because there's about 8, 9, 10, I lost count. There's so many civil suits he's facing. P. Diddy's going to be a problem. We don't know if he's talking, but again, be prepared. Don't be surprised if there's any superseding indictments forthcoming for Eric Adams. And then, of course, there's 300 people that is rumored to be involved in a corruption scandal that's widespread, Brandon, all over the state.
Is P. Diddy going to find himself like Epstein?
They say that, but you know, he's out over there having the time of his life, apparently in jail. He's getting along with his friends. I think that Epstein, that was handled in Manhattan, which I worked in both. I worked in Manhattan and in Brooklyn. The Brooklyn detention facility it's not, we're going to say, the greatest. It probably needs to be upgraded, but it is better, much better than the Manhattan facility. Manhattan facility, they call it the Tombs. It's very old, and that's where Epstein was staying. So I would guess no. I mean, anything can happen, but the Brooklyn facility is monitored better and is just equipped to be better. So I don't think you're going to hear anything in regards to that. I just think that don't be surprised if P. Diddy's singing like a canary. That's all I'm saying.
One final topic before we go to Anthony Rubin, who has found some of the Biden-Harris administration's missing children, hand testimonies from children who were trafficked in America with Anthony Rubin. But first, let me ask Sal. Sal, what about terrorism? Obviously, you worked in New York for so many years. You're there, 9/11. We had the bombing of the World Trade Center in 93. We now are getting reports tonight about what could be several shoulder rocket launchers that are in the U.S., 9 or so, looking to target President Trump's airplane. We've been talking here since, I don't know, 2008, 2010 about some 5,000 man pads floating around, Russian-made, floating around Venezuela. We've been talking about that, as like I said, since 2008, 2009, 2010, somewhere in there, of our concerns about those coming here into the country. August 1st, we did a whole show with a former military guy talking about our concerns for those with aircraft. Now here we are tonight being September 26th, and there's talk of these targeting President Trump's plane. How concerned are you with all the illegals here and the terrorists among them? What, from a street level perspective, what can you tell the American people?
I am, number one, I was always concerned about President Trump's plane, because I had a discussion with Roger just about a week and a half ago, and I believe there's been people that are worried and telling Roger, we feel he's got to keep an eye on the plane. So this is, now you're telling me about the terrorist threat, and that terrorist threat it should be elevated all over the country, because for the last 4 years, we've let every unvetted, undocumented human being just walk into this country, and we don't know where they're from, who they are. We have a migrant crime wave. It's infected the entire country. And guess what? You know, some of these people are terrorists, and they're admitting it. Because remember, wasn't it just, I mean, isn't the Iranians, aren't they trying to go after not only President Trump? I know they try to hack Roger Stone's emails. I was there when this whole incident happened, and the FBI is involved in that. So we know what's going on here. The threat is serious, and I know they're trying to downplay it, but people need to, you know, keep your eyes open and be alert at all times, because this country definitely, I wouldn't be surprised to hear about sleeper cells. They've let 4 years of unvetted human beings walk in, and it's only a matter of time before the next incident happens, unfortunately. I pray that the police department, they always, more than likely, the men and women of every police department will do their job. I don't know about the upper echelon, because as you could tell, a lot of them are corrupt, but the boots on the ground will do their best to protect lives. But who knows where these sleeper cells are? Of course, New York City is always the #1 target. But again, now we know that Trump himself is a target. So wherever he goes, who knows that follows. I definitely would I really hope President Trump not only has Secret Service, but his own security, just to make sure that nothing happens all the way to the election and after. Remember, Brennan, he has to make it to January 20th. It's not just the election. If he wins, we got a problem. Then you're really going to see these nut jobs and all these terrorists that we don't know about, sleeper cells. They might be out there waiting for that. So just we got to keep them in our prayers and stay vigilant, just as if you were a police officer too, Brent. Everybody's got to keep their eyes open because this is a big threat that people don't want to talk about, but it's right in your face. It is there.
Absolutely. Well said. Now, I see you're the host of the Sal Greco Show. Where can people find and listen to this show? Is it daily, weekly? Tell us about it.
I try to do something every couple of days. It depends on the news cycle, whatever. I mean, obviously this Eric Adams stuff is all over the place because I cover, politics, obviously the police department, a little bit of sports. I try to do a little bit of everything. So you can find me on Rumble and YouTube at the Sal Greco Show. Same thing on Apple, Spotify, all the podcast streaming platforms. The same thing, the Sal Greco Show. And you can follow me on Twitter or X, on Instagram at the Sal Greco, and Truth Social at Head of the Table.
Excellent. Well, your first-time guest, I hope you'll come back. You're a very good guest. You're a very entertaining and knowledgeable guest. You got great content, great delivery, and we'd love to have you back.
Brandon, it was an honor to be here after always seeing Roger on. And by the way, Carl Seraphin said hello tonight. He told me to specifically say hello to you.
Tell him I said hello. We need to get him back on the show as well. He's been busy.
Oh, yes.
I tried last week, but he was busy. But we're gonna be persistent. We don't give up.
You need to get him on. We actually was discussing something that would probably be funny about the new police commissioner because he just pulled up his Wikipedia and it was like, whoa there. So you should have him on. But Brandon,
I will text him tonight.
Anytime you need me.
Okay, you're in my phone. You'll be back. Thank you, Sal.
Thank you. God bless you, Brandon.
You too. Sal Greco checking in. Check him out on Rumble, social media. He gave his info, but just put in Sal Greco into Rumble and it should pop right up.